Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fractal 101. Today's topic, controllers. What are they? Where can I find them? And how can I use these in my presets? Well, there's a lot of them, so let's just get right to it. For this example, I am using my dance stock preset with my Man Steve Morse guitar. To find controllers and how to access them, there's a little tab in the top left of your editor window, and all of them will pop up. We will start with the tempo and pitch tab. Here you can set the tempo for your preset. You can also do this in the top right of your editor, either with the tap tempo using your mouse or typing it in. You can also use this dial or just type in your tempo. Next, we have the option of setting what tempo to use, whether it's the one saved in our preset or our global setup menu. If you have an entire show quantized to a specific BPM, except for a few little presets here and there, you could set this to global. It will automatically read what you've assigned to the global settings. Then we have a little pitch area here. Whatever input you're using, use that input. That is a great way to think about that. This is typically for pitch blocks and anything reading the input of your guitar. This will be very handy for you, say with a pitch harmonizer or a tuner. Next, we have this indispensable looping or practice tool, the metronome. You can assign this to varying outputs. Maybe you have two different monitors, or you have a send to front of house and one to your FR that's playing to you. Maybe that's output 2. You could send the metronome to just you. This is wonderful. If you want to be dialing in things at home with your delays, if you want to practice and you know the song is at that tempo, you have this option. No drummer required. You can just use this little knob and dial in how much of the metronome you want. Very, very handy. The next tab, LFO 1 and 2, are low frequency oscillators. This is a modifier that you can assign to any parameter with a little circle on it. For this example, we're going to use the wah. Typically, I use the wah assigned to an expression pedal or an envelope follower, which we will get to. For now, we're on the expression pedal, and it's set to auto-engage at medium position. We're going to assign this instead to our low-frequency oscillator 1A. As you can see, this is firing quite rapidly. We're going to turn the auto-engage off so this stays on, and we can hear this in its full scope. We have a square type, and it sounds like this. Very fast. You can adjust the rate with the rate knob. You can set the tempo of that to the click. Say you want it at quarter note. Get very dancey in there if you'd like. You also have the option of run and stop. You can set that up as an editable parameter as well, setting that maybe to a foot switch or a control switch. You can change the depth, the type, and the output phase, high cut, quantize. It's crazy. There's a lot of parameters in here for another video, but that is one option. Next up, we have our ADSR. What does that even mean? I've asked this question many times in my life. It is simply standing for the 4 parameters that you are editing: the attack, the decay, the sustain, and the release of whatever parameter you assign this to. You get a physical representation here in this graph. So if we change the attack, that is the first line. Very cool. We have our input source. If you're in input 1, have it on the input. We have different types, whether it's exponential or linear. You can see the differences on the graph. ADSR mode, we could have this play just once. We could have it loop, or we could have it sustain. Very handy. We have the threshold. This is assigned to how tough we're hitting this, or the velocity of our pick attack, and then our sustain level. Let's assign this to the wah as well. Let's get this crazy LFO out of here. ADSR 1. At completely stock settings, it will sound like this. There'll be 50 milliseconds for the attack to reach its zenith, then 50 milliseconds to decay, 50 to sustain, and another 50 to release. Let's bring those all up to 100 and see what happens. Know that if I don't go below that threshold, we never reset. So, in once mode, make sure it becomes quiet again, or you won't get the effect to retrigger. We could take this up quite a bit and see the full scope of this. Once I get to this threshold, we stop looping. So if you want that to continue a little further, take that threshold down. Just some of the things you can do when assigning this to a wah. You also have a more linear graph. Could be a really cool effect on your next preset. We have two versions of that, so ADSR 1 and 2. A lot of controllability there. Next up, we have our sequencer. This massive window pops up with a lot of different knobs. Crazy. What this does, it allows you to run whatever parameter you set this modifier to run through these percentages of whatever parameter it is. In our case, we have our wah. We could make this go crazy, and we could quantize it even. Using our tempo button, we'll take it to quarter notes. We are at 120 BPM. You could also manually adjust the rate. We could have this set to run. We are in 8 stages, so only the first 8 of these are highlighted. You can see they're slightly dimmer throughout. If we assign this to our wah block, it'll sound like this. And you can get some crazy cool effects with that. Let's change that to a 16th note. We'll have more stages. We'll make this a little crazier. Here we go. Very cool. If you're setting this to a 16th note, you could have this at 16 stages or 32, but you could have it be non-symmetrical and make a very cool override effect. You also have this damping switch, which allows for the time in between each of these stages to be more gradual or punctual, with the lower number. So with 26 milliseconds, we have this. Think of this like a waveform, and then rounding the edges the more you crank up the damping time. You could set them all to a particular parameter or have your grid highlight any particular number so you have your place in time. Again, you can set this to pause, run, or stop using a foot switch, expression pedal, any modifier you would like. Moving on, we have our envelope and manual. I love auto wahs. I have more auto wahs than I have any other pedal combined. Okay, just any other pedal, but love them. They don't have an auto wah block in here. I have made a video on creating auto wahs within a Fractal, but the gist of it, you can assign the control to your envelope follower, set the threshold, your attack, your release, give it a little bit of gain to really push the front of that. And you could change the low cut or high cut as well. But then you get a touch sensitive wah. Lower that threshold. Very bright, very brittle. Raise the threshold. You'll be hanging out on the heel. Very cool. You can also change the manuals of this envelope follower and set this, say, to manual 1. This will just lock it in. You could switch different parameters to be locked in at different percentages and be fixed. That is our manual. Moving on, scene controllers. There is a video on scene controllers on this channel, but essentially you can assign this to anything where, say, we want our bass knob to be at 5, then 3, and then 8. Between scenes, we could have this at 5, 3, and 8, but that doesn't reflect the knob. So it would be 80, 30, 50, because we're going in percentages. If we assigned this to our bass knob, we are on scene controller 1, 0 to 10 as our min and max. You see we are on 5, 3, and 8. Pretty spectacular. This is a great way to control a lot of parameters at once, because you could assign that to a mid, same scene controller, and change your min maximum and have different, less extreme parameters move around. You could leave them all at the same number. Many, many options. With scene controllers, you get 4 of them. You also have the option with these to assign these to specific channels or all of the channels. Very cool, but a lot to unpack in scene controllers. Next up, we have our CS per scene, our control switches per scene. As you can see here, I default everything to off, but my control switch number 2 and number 3 are turned on for scene number 4. That is my delay and my filter block, which serves as my boost. This is a great way to assign this to any parameter, whether it's bypass engage, input boost on a block, whatever you'd like, and have it default to being on in particular scenes, but still assign this to a control switch or a foot switch to allow you to bring it in manually as you see fit. Very, very handy. And last but not least, a list of all of our modifiers that are in use. This is incredibly handy, especially when you've been toying around as we have today. We can see that our first modifier from left to right is our manual. I do not have this set to my expression pedal. I would want to go back and do that. And it is set on our wah block to our control knob. Our second modifier is control switch 1, chorus 1, and that is set to the bypass. This is incredible. This allows you, much like the scene manager, to check out all of the things you've been editing, and if you need to go in and change a particular thing or your foot switch isn't reacting when you hit control switch 6, you can go find exactly why that is the case. You also have up to 4 channels for controllers. So you could have 4 different tempos. Say we want scene 2 to be at 160 BPM. We set channel B to 160 BPM. That changes immediately. Very cool for songs that have multiple tempos. You can have up to 8 LFOs, 8 ADSRs, 4 different sequencers, 4 different envelope style effects or parameters. You have scene controllers that can all be changed, or your control switches per scene, and you'd be able to see all of that still with your modifiers window. That's as quick of an overview as I could do with the controllers menu. Incredibly powerful, incredibly useful, and a lot of stuff to toy around with in there and get really cool sounds that you wouldn't otherwise get from analog devices, or you'd have to assemble a lot of patch cables. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed this, there's a lot more on this channel for Fractal 101, tutorials of tone, gear reviews, playthroughs, etc. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you all next time.